The next presentation is special J1939 networks, and we have seen already in the beginning that J1939 is used in many different application fields. I will try to summarize those which we have not mentioned yet. So other J1939 based solutions are the 16844, which is the tachograph. This is done in the ISO TC22SC31 working group 4, which I'm convening. And and the same group is also responsible for the ISO 11992 series, standardizing the communication between truck and trailer. The ISO series collision warning and avoidance for earth moving machines. This is another group. I am just have some basic information on that. And the same is on the marine applications and the battery charging, which is done in ICTC 69. The fleet management, we will not go into that much detail because this is well standardized and it's just providing information. You only can read this information. You can't have access to the in-vehicle networks. It's just what the truck manufacturers or the fleet the trailer manufacturers provide to the user. And we also will talk a little bit about the CIA profiles mapped to J1939 and how we can open service data objects and emergency protocols to J1939. As you have seen, this is important for those where you have in your body application both can open as well as J1939. Let's start with the tachograph. The tachograph is a series of documents. The part 5, which is still available, specifies a secured CAN interface. Unfortunately, it is not more secured, and therefore it will be withdrawn and the security will be done not on the CAN interface. Part 1 specifies some electrical connectors, and then we have a specific interface for the motion sensor, and this is non-CAN, as well as the electrical interface for the recording unit, which is also non-CAN. What is CAN related is the CAN interface in part 4. This is J1939 based and provides the information from the motion sensor and from the recording unit to the other ECUs. And we have also diagnostic, and the diagnostic is also done via the J1939 based network and the keyword, or alternatively on the keyword 2000 interface. And part 7, this describes the dedicated parameter groups and suspect parameters for the communication in part 4. This standard series is referenced by European regulations, and therefore we have to be in line with them, and we have to update this. And in the moment, this entire series is under systematic review. And we are in the disvoting. This means there's the last chance to have technical comments. And I hope this starts in the end of May. And then we will have a 3 months of voting period. And after that, then we can go to observe all the received comments and to clean up the document and then to publish it. So the tachograph system, you see here a schematic on that. You see that the point 4 and 5, this is the documents, and this is related to the CAN interface. So we have a data interface and we have the service interface. This could be the same physical line. However, it could be also 2 different networks. This is not specified in the documents. More interesting for all truck makers is the ISO 11992 series. This is the link between the truck and trailer, and this is also mandatory by means of European regulations, in particular for part 2, for the brakes and for the running gear. The physical layer is different than the high-speed transceiver chip. This is specific transceiver, and their transceivers compliant to the standards are not available on the open market. There's one company offers this integrated transceiver only bilaterally to selected partners. or you have to implement it discretely, which is also possible and not that big deal. Part 2, as I said, is the application layer for brakes and running gear, and describes also the application. And this is currently under systematic review. We have had a meeting this morning, and there will be integrated also some tire pressure monitor applications. Additionally, there will be integrated also parking brake applications and so on, what is not in the current edition. And we're also thinking about a wireless gateway, which we need, for example, for some security purposes. Part 3 is under publication. This means we have already reviewed this document, and this describes all application parameters other than for brakes and running gear. This includes, and I will come to that, for example, some very sophisticated new applications. Diagnostic communication is specified in part 4 and only available for part 2, running on part 2. And this is currently under systematic review. Just to make it clear, part 2 and part 3 are two physical different networks. So that means the communication between truck and trailer. One is just for the brakes and running gear. This is somehow different, and this is regulated by the European government. Part 3 is optional and only under the control and under the application of the OEMs. Maybe there's one note, there's an incompatibility between the J1939 regarding the time and date parameter, but this will be solved. We will then in the future make reference to the J1939 digital annex, so that we are then again in line with the specification of the time and date parameter. What has happened, we have just swapped day and time, date and month. So that means you have 12 days in the year, you have a correct interpretation of the data. Otherwise, it's wrong. So you see here the reference to the OC layers. We have the part 2 and part 3. And as I mentioned, these are two different physical networks. We have the communication for the diagnostic, which is running on the part 2 network and not on the other part. Okay, here you see the physical outline of the network. And as I mentioned, this is a specific point-to-point communication between ECU1 and ECU2. ECU1 is in the truck and ECU2 is on the trailer. And we have there are several cables, and some of the cables are, so to say, outside of the vehicle. So there's no protection, and therefore we need specific cables and specific lines, and they shall be twisted. And you see that in maximum we can achieve 40 meters with this physical layer. That's the maximum which we have. You see also that the voltage is quite different. So this is not the normal voltage level which you know from high-speed transceivers. It is now the 24 voltage or the 12 volt voltage, depending on your power supply in your trucks. And then you have there a swapping of the lines and the different voltages. This guarantees at the end a better behavior if there's disturbances from outside. So the physical layer has also some restrictions. So we can run just 125 kilobits per second. On the other hand, we have a one-wire fallback operation, so to say fault tolerance. This is important. If you lose one of the connections, then it still can operate on between the CAN high or the CAN low to ground. And this gives you some tolerance regarding the connection. We also have some limitations to the data link layer features. We are only allowed to use 29-bit IDs. and there's no remote frames at all. But this also belongs, or this the same as for J1939. J1939 also forbids to send remote frames, and but they allow to use 11-bit identifiers for proprietary purposes, but this is not allowed in ISO 11992 networks, and therefore you only have allowed to use parameter groups with a 29-bit identifier, no proprietary ones. Such a road train, we can have multiple towed vehicles. You see here an example. You have the one at the towing vehicle, and then you have a towed semi-trailer, and then you have a dolly, and then you have another semi-trailer. So that means you have already three trailers or three towed vehicles here specified, or in this application. And therefore we need, and we have just a point-to-point communication between the towing and the towed vehicle. This means we have to forward the information between the different networks by means of bridges or gateways. For that purpose, the towing vehicle sends a message with its source, and this is 235, and then we can forward this to all the different towed vehicles, and we can have a maximum 5 towed vehicles in such a train. So the towed vehicle, or the node, identifies its predecessor by the source address of the received general purpose message 11, assigns itself a source address based on this, and sends its general purpose message 1 to the potential receivers. So this means if you then have an additional link to the next trailer, then you send this forward. And this is quite well standardized, and this means you can easily connect the different trailers. You know that in Sweden they have allowed 4 trailers, in Australia they have 5 trailers. In Germany it's only allowed 2 trailers. So for both networks compliant to ISO 11992-2 and 3, there are features, and the application layer is based on J1939-21, the parameter group definitions. The SPs can be indicated as not available. So this means there is no requirement to implement something. Anything is optional. And for the part 2, which is the brake and running gear, this is regulated by European government or by the European Parliament and or regulation, and they specify what is mandatory from the parameter groups as well as from the mapped suspect parameters. This is not the business of the ISO standard. The data profile layer, this we have selected parameters compliant with J1939 Digital Annex and J1939-71, and we have specific additional parameters specified in ISO 11992 or in part 3. And all parameter groups are listed in the J1939 Digital Annex, but some are specified in detail in the ISO documents. So this is how we avoid double specification. And this was not done in the historical documents. So there was a lot of double specifications, and this causes some incompatibilities if one of the document owner changes and the other not. But note, all parameter groups are optional, and in order to achieve interoperability, additional specification is needed, e.g. regulations as in Europe. So what functions we have for the parameters group for brakes and running gear network? We are sending from the towing vehicle to the towed vehicle the electronic brake system messages, EBS 11 and 12, the running gear equipment messages, RGE 11 and RGE 12. And you see that always when we send from the towing vehicle to the towed vehicle, the one indicates that this is transmitted, and then the following is just a number. And we have the time and date message, which is TD11, and to send to the towed vehicle. And from the towed vehicle, we send to the towing vehicle the response messages, electrical brake system messages, EBS21 to EBS26, and running gear equipment messages, RGE21 to RGE24. So there's a lot of messages, and there are some messages transmitted with high frequency in 10 milliseconds, and this EBS11, EBS12, and EBS26. And this could lead to very high bus load if you have multiple trailers. So be careful if you implement all the additional functions, and it could be that then you have a bus load of more than 100%. If you have, for example, 5 trailers, then you can easily calculate the sum of all the messages, and then maybe you come to the limits of the 125 kilobit network. So what we are doing in the next edition, which we discussed in this morning, we have additional eDrive parameters, and you can imagine that we will have in the future also electrical driven trucks, and that we need some additional information, and they will be mapped into the EBS11 and EBS21 parameter groups. We have enhanced this regarding the parking brake status. We enhance also the EBS by the neutral gear status parameter, which is not today available. And we copy some of the object detection parameters from GPM22 to EBS25. We also have enhanced running gear equipment 13 parameter group by several parameters, the fifth wheel load, ambient air temperature, and so on. And we will introduce new parameter groups for the information if the trailer software has been updated or not. So we want to know that, for example, the trailer has been updated when we were parking, because there maybe is also that the trailer software is updated by means of via the air. New parameters for tire pressure monitoring systems should be mapped to EBS23, etc. So this we have just started to collect all the requirements for this network, and there may be new requirements and new feature requests which we have to fulfill. The already under publication, and this is close to be published. I hope this will be ready by beginning of June. The 11992-3 functions, which is all functions except brakes and running gear. We have from the towing vehicle to the towed vehicle all those parameter groups which you see here. The general purpose parameter messages. We have the time and date. We have the object detection messages, and we have, and this is maybe very important, that we can cause the trailer to provide information of objects which they detect behind them or on their side. We have also the military application messages, and we have the can open application messages, which we send from the towing vehicle to the towed vehicle, and vice versa. We have also parameter groups from the towed vehicle to the towing vehicle. These are the general purpose messages 21 to 211. So you see that we have there are a lot of different message information to provide. We have the object detection messages from 21 to 221. This is that we can inform the towing vehicle that there is some objects detected on the side or behind the trailer. We have also the military application messages, and they can open application messages as a response to the above mentioned. Just a few information to the object detection parameter group sequence. You see here the sequence. You always request this information from the towing vehicle, and the towing vehicle then answered the questions. And this is to implement automatic steering and most or many trucks can do this, but if they have a trailer, they need additional information. For example, if they want to depart the lane, and then you automatically, then you need to know if this is possible or not, or if there's somebody driving on your side or behind you, and all this information should be given by the trailer. How this is done, we don't care. We just provide the information from the trailer, and we don't say how the sensors should be designed, just what the sensors provide. So we can't detect all the objects, so we need to prioritize them. So this here you see that automatically the smart sensors will detect, for example, these 5 different objects. Normally this will be some cars, some bicycles, or whatever it is, and then they should inform the towing vehicle about that. And we have selected that the most critical ones are the object 1 and 2, and this is sent via the ISO 11939-3 network is sent as an information that you have detected 2 objects very close to you. Okay, and this contains what that you have selected things, and you provide then the object distance regarding the longitudinal and the lateral distance. Okay, CIA is not directly involved in the IEC 61162-3 standard, which is described the NEMA 2000 specification, but we observe this. And what we know is that there is no systematic review planned, no plan to migrate to KNFD or to do anything else. They are happy with that, what they have, and they will keep it in the moment. And if they want to go another, if you're looking for another more high performance network, then they should do. But in the moment, there is no activity in the IEC. CIA also provided some J1939 related CIA documents, in particular the CIA 510 document. This provides detailed specification of the CAM11 and CAM21 parameter groups, and they map an SDO, the service data object, so that you can access. This looks like quite similar to that what the ISOBUS has done. And we have also an emergency parameter group to inform that some emergency has happened. We also have two of our profiles mapped to J1939. This is the encoder profile, and the other one is the inclinometer profile. And other profiles may be mapped if required. I think in particular on CIA 408, which is the profile for hydraulic components, or fluid power components or devices, which we have, which maybe is an interest of use also on J1939, because they have not a detailed specification on that. So now you can use any CIA, any encoder with a CAN open interface. Just change this slightly with another protocol stack. The parameters and the parameter groups are the very same. Okay, then I'd like to thank you all. Thank you for participating.